It should be reading, writing, and arithmetic and nutritional science right through grade school, and people learn nothing about the most important thing that affects their longevity, whether they're demented, whether they're in a nursing home, whether their life is tragic or not. The most critical thing affecting their health and happiness, people are completely ignorant about. And even the dietitians are mostly ignorant. They're just backward, and their education is not up to date, which I'm working dietitian programs now to make them embrace more modern science and to be more accurate and more effective.
The Vidal Speaks podcast.
Episode 64, Dr. Joel Fuhrman on the Nutritarian lifestyle. Welcome to Vidal Speaks. My name is Deborah Vidal, former 11-year LPGA golf pro turned classical homeopath, certified plant-based nutritionist, and wellness coach. Each week here on Vidal Speaks, we bring you knowledge, inspiration, or natural remedies to help you take charge of your health and feel your best. I believe health is freedom and knowledge is power, so tuning in each week will give you the power to take steps towards freeing yourself from the chains that hold you back from having the energy to do all you want in life. No matter where you are in your journey of wellness, Vidal Speaks can help. I promise. Hello, Vidal Speakers. Hope you're feeling good today. I'm so happy as always to be here with you again. I love hearing from you guys, so make sure you keep sending me emails. If you haven't done it already, you can send me a request of something you'd like to hear or just ask me a question. Today's show is going to be a very educational one. My guest is Dr. Joel Fuhrman, MD. You guys probably know Dr. Fuhrman because he's done a few big PBS specials on using nutrition-filled diets to heal so many diseases. He calls his way of eating a Nutritarian lifestyle because it focuses on eating healthy foods that are the highest in nutrients and the lowest in calories. It's basically quality over quantity, and he speaks about a lot of other things that I like about lifestyle, such as fitness and sleep, so that's why he calls it a lifestyle, which is true. Health is really a lifestyle. It's not a diet. I hate that word, diet. Anyway, Dr. Fuhrman says that high micronutrient foods come straight from nature. Whole plant foods such as vegetables, fruits, seeds, nuts, and beans, and they should be the basis of our healthy anti-cancer diet. Without adequate micronutrients, food cravings, discomfort, and the demand to overconsume calories can be overwhelming and derail any effort to lose weight and eat healthy. He has 8 steps to live a healthy nutritarian lifestyle. I'm going to read them to you. They are: Number 1, understanding food addictions and cravings. Number 2, understand the concept of nutrient density. Number 3, reroute your thinking. Number 4, plan and organize. Number 5, retrain your taste buds. Number 6, embrace your natural sweet tooth. Number 7, make the salad the main dish and eat lots of anti-cancer foods. And number 8, avoid nutrient deficiencies. And I want to read you what he says about this one. And although he's written things about each of these, you can read it on the links in the show notes. I want to read what he wrote about this one because to me it's important because I didn't get a chance to ask him about supplements in the interview. So here's what he says. A blood test is the best way to show if you're not lacking in any important vitamin. No one diet can supply the optimal amount of nutrients for everyone, and individuals have different abilities to absorb certain nutrients. One of the most important deficiencies is vitamin D, the sunshine vitamin. Over half of the world's population is deficient in vitamin D. A healthy diet can be suboptimal in zinc, B12, iodine, vitamin D, and DHA for many people. If supplements are necessary, take the time to read all the ingredients. The problem is that most multivitamins and nutritional supplements contain dangerous forms of nutrients, such as folic acid and vitamin A, which can increase one's risk of cancer. Please review my vitamin advisor on my website. Okay, so that's what Dr. Fuhrman wrote about supplements. And one thing I do know is that he's formulated his own supplements, because that is one way to make sure that you put the right ingredients in the right form in there. And he's also marketed a lot of his own salad dressings, which are oil-free. So you should check all that stuff out, especially if you're really wanting to get healthy and change your diet and you need like a transition period before you feel like you have time to make a lot of these things yourself. They're really wonderful. Okay, now let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Fuhrman. Through Dr. Fuhrman's medical practice, as well as his New York Times best-selling books and PBS specials, he has helped thousands of people lose weight permanently and reverse chronic diseases such as heart disease, diabetes, autoimmune diseases, and chronic pain syndromes, including migraines, and this is all done using a nutrient-dense, plant-rich eating style that he calls the Nutritarian diet. Dr. Fuhrman is the president of the Nutritional Research Foundation and is a frequent guest on the Dr. Oz show, for which he serves on the medical advisory board. An internationally recognized expert on nutrition and natural healing, Dr. Fuhrman is also a health and fitness enthusiast whose athletic background gives him a keen insight into the importance of diet and physical exercise. Before graduating from the University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine, Dr. Fuhrman was a world-class figure skater who placed third in the 1976 World Professional Pair Skating Championship. Dr. Fuhrman devotes his life to nutritional research, staying up to date on thousands of articles published in the scientific journals and working with nutritional researchers around the world. His expertise includes 25 years of experience caring for more than 10,000 patients with serious medical conditions and, in most cases, facilitating their recovery via nutritional methods. His books have no preconceived philosophy, agenda, or bias. They are all an uncompromising assessment that offers the gold standard of nutritional excellence to foster the greatest potential for disease prevention, reversal, and extending human lifespan. Dr. Fuhrman's on a mission to change the way America eats and has chosen PBS to help get his message out. Often called America's Health Coach, Dr. Fuhrman's programs are the Dr. Fuhrman End Dieting Forever, 3 Steps to Incredible Health and Immunity Solution, and they have already aired over 31,000 times on PBS stations and helped raise over $25 million. This amazing response from viewers makes Dr. Fuhrman's programs one of the most successful ever in PBS history. His latest program, Eat to Live with Dr. Fuhrman, premiered across the nation on PBS stations in June 2016, so be sure to check that out. One thing I want to tell you guys, this is a man that's very well researched and has a lot of integrity to what he says. So now let's go talk to Dr. Fuhrman, okay? You're going to enjoy this one. You can sit back and relax, but you'll still learn a lot. So this one doesn't need your seatbelt like some of mine do. Here we go. Hi, Dr. Fuhrman. You've done so much work to promote healthy lifestyle, and I personally want to thank you for all you do because I've followed your work for a really long time, and you were always the plant-based doctor that I feel put a lot of emphasis on the word healthy, which is why I love your work. So thanks for joining me today on the Vidal Speaks podcast.
Thanks, Deborah. Looking forward to talking to you today and your listeners.
Hey, and I think we have something in common, which is that we both had a really high commitment to our sport. I was a LPGA player for 11 years, and I just learned today that you were a world-class figure skater. Wow, that's fantastic. How was that?
Yeah, well, I really enjoyed it, and I worked very hard in my childhood and teenage years, training 5 to 7 hours a day. It's like a full-time job. I was second in the United States in 1973 in pairs figure skating with my sister and third in the world in 1976. I was on crutches in 74, so I missed the Olympic tryout. I missed, getting in the Olympics because I couldn't get ready in time. But after the Olympics, I came, But in any case, it was that injury really derailed a lot of my expectations and, not missing the Olympics. But in any case, I had a tremendous time, and maybe my injury sparked my interest in medicine and enabled me to choose a different career. And now I've had a tremendously rewarding and satisfying life, taking care of millions of people and influencing the health of, taking care of thousands, tens of thousands of patients and helping them recover their health and influencing the health of millions of people around the world. So I've had just been tremendously lucky in being able to have my message get out there to so many people.
Yeah, and sometimes what seems like a horrible thing, I can imagine at the time missing the Olympics because of an injury. I can really imagine that as an athlete, but I kind of same way. I hurt my back and got sick from all the pesticides, and my back injury was just too much to continue. And then you don't realize that when that door closes, the next one that opens is actually even better because it's life-changing for you to help change the world and to change others. So I can honestly relate to what you're saying. I'm curious, is ice skating a sport where there must be lots of injuries with all that, jumping and twirling and training? Is there a lot of injuries in that sport?
There's a significant amount of injuries. I think, we certainly hurt our bodies in some way trying to go after your dream in that sporting world. So, and also the coaches in those days, they just drove you to perform without thinking of what would, in my case, certainly, there wasn't enough care taken to prevent injury, so I think that was the major factor. When I coach people, have coached skaters in the subsequent years, or even speak to athletes, Olympic hopefuls and Olympic athletes, which I have talked about nutrition and injury prevention, I'm much more concerned and interested in their consciousness of what they should do and what they could do to prevent these type of injuries that could arise in their sports. So it wasn't a big thing 40 years ago as it is today.
Yeah, that's true. We've become a lot more aware, but we're also pushing the body a lot harder too. So it's a good thing that they become more aware on that kind of injury prone. Every sport is different. Golf has tremendous issues with the back and the shoulders and wrists, but every sport has its own body part that's more stressed than others. I'm curious if the ice skaters back then and now, are they very into diet and nutrition?
No, but in recent years, I've been working with more and more athletes and getting incredible results. I mean, an example might be like Eric Schlappe, who was in 4 Olympic Games for downhill skiing, who followed my work. And I think his longevity in that sport, to able to be in 4 Olympic Games and continue his world-class times for all those years. And even look at Tom Brady and how he's certainly playing at a high level with his age because of his healthy diet. But people like Vanessa Williams making her recovery from scleroderma and autoimmune conditions. I've had so many people make recoveries and prolong their careers through excellent nutrition. And I have athletes right now. I have a boy who's been a Nutritarian since birth, following my nutritional plan since birth. And he's now number 1 ranked in the 18 and under category as a triathlete, with the fastest time for triathletes, and probably be in the next Olympics, certainly be the United States hopeful. And people I have another guy who's lost 80 pounds, a policeman from St. Louis, who now is, lifting world-class records in powerlifting on a Nutritarian diet. And I have a hammer thrower out of northern Arizona who's doubling his times and improving his distances. And so these people are losing weight, getting stronger, getting better stamina. But most importantly is prolonging their career, number 1. And number 2, not getting sick, so it derails their potential to continue their training uninterrupted and to be there when the competitions and the events arise, to not get ill as often or hardly ever get ill. And that's why most of these world-class athletes are adopting my recommendations and carrying around blenders and drinking the smoothies and the greens and the raw onion. They're doing this so they can really not get derailed from their training by frequent illness.
Yeah. Then what better person to have to pass your message on than someone that has access to millions in the whole world, just to show them what they're doing. I know, like the Williams sisters, like you said, with the autoimmune condition that she had, and she went plant-based and just really reversed her health around. It's really a great message out there to show people how important food really is, and that food is medicine. And as Hippocrates said, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. And these kind of athletes are showing the world how true that is. So it's really cool that you're working with a lot of athletes, because it helps get our message out there faster and in a bigger way. So that's great. That must be exciting to work with people at that level.
Yes, very exciting. But, but every person I work with, even when, obviously, what's more thrilling than having let's see, a 15-year-old who's been in bed for 3 years with chronic headaches, who now back to school, running for a school presidency, back on the track team after being in bed for 3 years and having experimental drugs tried on her to break her severe headaches. Or a person on the national renal transplant list with lupus, who might die of lupus, who makes a full recovery when gets rid of her lupus completely. Or people in bed with psoriatic arthritis for 20 years can hardly, function back to having a full life playing volleyball and doing sports and jogging and climbing mountains again. The point I'm making is that it's so thrilling and exciting to watch people turn around serious illnesses and get well. And as you just said, nutritional excellence gives people that opportunity and is so much more powerful than drugs. And conventional medical care is so barbaric in a way that people aren't given this life-saving information. They're just having medications thrown at them. And that's the tragedy, and that's my passion, is to make people aware that they don't have to be sick and they don't have to have heart attacks and strokes. They don't have to get breast cancer, prostate cancer, and colon cancer. And if they have an autoimmune condition, it can be reversed, not just treated with poisonous drugs to a shortened and tragic and painful life. And I don't care if people choose to eat poorly and want to take chances with their lives, but at least my issue is that people aren't given the opportunity to even know this information. They're not even granted the right to make the right choice, because they're not told of this approach.
It's so true. And part of that is just because the message out there is about, how drugs take your symptoms away, but it doesn't ever use the word cure because they can't cure you. And, our industry is full of corruption and they don't have people's health at the heart of it. And it's people like you and me that I'm also very passionate about education. That's why I halted my clinical practice really to do this podcast to get the word out, because people were coming to me sicker and sicker, and you're just limited on how many patients you can see. And it's so much about education and getting the message out. And you've certainly done that with all your work on PBS and your great DVDs and just all the things that you can tell how passionate you are about it. So it's fantastic. And what you say too is every person's life, it doesn't matter if they're famous or they're not famous. It really doesn't matter. Just seeing as a clinical practitioner, one patient get better from a horrible disease and have their life back, it makes you feel like your work here on the planet has been worthwhile, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And I think that you just articulated my point I was making, that being in practice, I feel so blessed to have touched people's lives in that positive way, that people say to me all the time, aren't you upset or concerned that the message isn't getting out there? And I said, I'm doing the best I can to help people. But even if my career was halted today and I never did one more thing in my life, I feel good about the people I have helped, and that's why I went to medical school and pursued this career. And I never expected to influence as many people as I have already. And just when you can help people even that you're close to or people that come to you in need is such an incredible, rewarding experience. So I think that we're very lucky. And even though that doesn't mean we're giving up or not trying to continue to reach more people, it just means that I don't have to feel disappointed that the world hasn't embraced this. I can feel excited about all the people that have embraced it and have gotten well from my efforts. You follow me?
Yeah. That's so true. And, it is a really huge growing movement just to become healthier, but especially by eating lots of whole foods and a plant-based diet. And so I just heard just the other day that I think it was Dr. Oz. I think it was something I read that Dr. Oz, who I know you've been on his show, but he stated that the movement of, I don't know if you even need to say the word veganism, but I think that's the word that he used, is the number one growing movement in 2017. So hallelujah that it's growing. It doesn't matter, what the percentage is. We just know that it's growing because people are getting sick and they're seeing other people get better, and the truth is finally starting to rise to the surface.
Yeah, there's so much mixed messages, bad diet messages. There's a lot of alternative medicine nonsense, and both conventional and alternative medicine puts people in the cure mentality as opposed to changing their lifestyles, and sets people on paths down the wrong direction. And then there's even these nutritional gurus in all directions, in the meat-based, in the paleo community, in the vegan community, that give people sloppy science, bad information, and interfere with people meeting their full potential. So, and I coined the word Nutritarian, because I wanted to make it clear that we're talking about a diet that's designed for optimal health and longevity. I'm not designing a program designed to recruit more people or be more popular or socially acceptable. I'm not basing it on philosophy or animal rights or the environment or veganism or ethics, even though those things are important. It's not my primary expertise and specialty is to focus on the science and the clinical efficacy of the program that's created for various disease states. And so, in other words, to be able to do things that are conservative and not take chances with people's lives and give them the best possible opportunity to get well, that's somewhat rare. It's somewhat rare because so many people on all sides of the equation have these biases that influence their thinking and giving people suboptimal advice.
Yeah. And I would like to talk to you a little bit about that because I know the paleo movement. I mean, I live in LA, but I think it's huge everywhere. You see, paleo podcasts, paleo books, paleo cookbooks, everybody's paleo. My market that used to be a healthy market here that had so many plant-based options. Now they've knocked a whole row down just to put all meat in there, and everything in the hot food department now is all with meat. And they're just catering to the people who are probably asking for more paleo food. But I'd like to know what you think about that movement because you're someone who does so much reading of research. What are the ramifications of a diet like this that's so high in protein? I would like to know your thoughts on that.
And I've written 10 books. I have 6 books that have been New York Times bestsellers, and I do cover that extensively. Even in my last book called The End of Heart Disease, I evaluated the popular diets, the Mediterranean diet, the paleo diet, even the popular plant-based authors who have had success, the DASH diet, and all the controversies and differences. And I went through the science that helped people make sense of where these decisions are coming from and the data and science that supports each decision. And so they can really become, by evaluating those things, the reader can become an expert and it'll heighten their nutritional expertise. But to answer your question directly, I have to say that not only does your diet need to be rich in antioxidants and phytochemicals from plant foods, but it has to be hormonally favorable to optimally reverse disease and to prolong human lifespan. And by hormonally favorable, we're talking about hormones like insulin, which is raised by high glycemic carbohydrates and and processed foods, and insulin like growth factor 1 or IGF-1, which can be raised by sugar and glycemic carbohydrates, but it's most powerfully elevated by animal protein, the animal products in your diet. Not by the animal fat, but by the animal protein per se, because it's a high bolus or surge of amino acids into the bloodstream at one time that raises the IGF-1 to unfavorable levels. And the Americans' levels are in a cancer-promoting range of over 200 in IGF-1. And the more animal protein you eat in your diet, the higher those levels surge, increasing your risk of cancer. And I have to say, I'm okay with people coming up with hypotheses about nutrition, longevity, and diet. But then we have to look at the evidence for how do those hypotheses bear out with evidence. And unfortunately, you could say fortunately, that we have to give more credence to studies that go on with many thousands of people as parts of those studies and go on for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years. The more years a study goes on for, and the larger numbers of people, the more we can get a better feeling and indicative of what the risks are or benefits of that dietary approach would be. And so doing a diet to 1 or 2 years or 6 months looking at soft endpoints like weight loss or triglycerides or cholesterol or glucose is okay, but it's not as effective at looking at 100,000 people followed for 20 years and looking at hard endpoints like death or cancer diagnoses or heart attacks or strokes, seeing what happens to these people who are followed for many years. And we have these excellent studies done, which I could mention a few of them. For example, a study done in the published in the Annals of Internal Medicine in 2010, followed more than 129,000 people for more than 20 years and found a 43% increased death death rate over that 20-year period for people eating a diet higher in animal protein compared to lower. And that was people with the pattern of removing processed foods, vegetables with more animal products compared to vegetables with lower animal products. They saw a more 43% increased death rate overall over the 20-year period. That's a huge study. And you can't even, that already makes it, how should I say, irresponsible to be advocating a paleo diet. Then in British Medical Journal 2012, a study on 43,000 women plotted the amount of animal products they ate in their diet and gave them a score actually of 1 to 20, whereas 20 they were like a ketogenic Atkins diet, and 18 or 19 they were like a high paleo diet, and with like eating, and at 1 they were vegan, and 2 they were eating 5% of calories from animal products. And they plotted these people from 1 to 20 based on the percentage of animal products they ate compared to plant materials, and they found that people with scored above 16 had a 60% increase of cardiovascular death and a 5% increase for every point they went up from 1 to 20. We're talking here about 43,000 people followed for many years. And then in 2014, another study followed people between the ages of 50 and 65 for 18 years, following a 4-fold increased risk in cancer and a 75% increase in total death in those on a higher percent of animal products. And the higher amounts were about 30% of calories from animal products, considered very high by worldwide standards, even though Americans are consuming more than that, an average of about 33% of calories from animal products, compared to lower than 10% in the low animal product category, keeping in mind that a lot of the paleo advocates, people are eating 50, 60, 70 calories from animal products. The point is that these diets radically shorten lifespan, radically. They're exceedingly dangerous. And people that are advocating these high protein, high animal product diets should be put out of business in some way. It's like going out and selling cocaine or selling cigarettes to minors. It's really irresponsible. The studies with the long-term studies, and people are so, how should I say, they're so biased. The average person on the street, I'm talking and lecturing to people, and you see that these people who want to eat a certain way, they'll deny all evidence. It's almost like religion or politics.
It is.
All evidence to want to do and want to think the way they want to think. But I have to say there is a coalescing, or there's a growing army of people in the field of nutritional science research that are not commercially affiliated, that are now embracing this concept that the diet has to be nutrient dense, rich in natural foods, and have a minimal amount of animal products if people are going to achieve normalcy as far as health and longevity. So I think that more and more nutritional scientists are in agreement. We're talking about the World Health Organization coming out with these principles now, supporting this, that the American Institute of Cancer Research supporting it, the World Cancer Research Fund. In other words, what I'm saying is that the percent of legitimate scientists agreeing with this message of high natural plant food exposure with lower consumption of animal products held to very low levels is certainly achieving more wide acceptance in the scientific community.
That's true. And because you're such an expert at medical research and reading all these studies, can you offer any advice to all of us about how someone can determine what they're reading, where it's coming from, and if it was just coming from the very industry that's created the product or the drug, or just a person that's had no clinical experience in writing an article? How does someone know that? Because the internet is so easy to get information now that there's so much bad information also.
I hate to turn it into a plug for myself, but that's why I write books, so I can show people the research pro and con. Like when I talk about the research in the book about why people think saturated fat is now good, that fat is no longer the bad guy, and butter and cheese and eggs are back, and sugar is the bad guy. And I go through the research showing why people have come to those conclusions, and showing that just because you prove or you show in a study that eating a diet with high glycemic carbohydrates was more dangerous than eating animal products doesn't make animal products favorable. It just makes them less dangerous than the carbohydrate. And you'd have to compare the animal products to eating beans or vegetables and compare those two, which was never done in the study. They just compared animal products to high glycemic carbohydrate consumption. So in other words, I don't think people have a lot of people, some people do, but a lot of people don't have the knowledge of all the studies done on the subject matter. When you're considering taking DHA or B12, or when you salt, good or bad, or whatever you're considering, I'm trying to give a very unbiased and comprehensive look at the studies and help people interpret the data so they can see why people have come to erroneous and false conclusions and where the preponderance of evidence does lie, so people can make up their own minds, and because if they've been fully educated and informed, not because somebody's trying to convince them that this is, by hiding the information. Almost all these books, whether it's people writing books with with a predetermined vegan philosophy, trying to prove that a vegan diet is the best, or whether it's a person trying to advocate eat for your blood type or eat for your eye color or a pet, whatever they're doing, they're trying to collect data that supports their predetermined agenda. And instead of trying to collect the data on one side, I'm trying to show data on both sides and showing if you interpret it properly and really look at all the data, it's not contradictory. The data is very favorably points to where you need it to point to and gives people a much greater understanding. So I'm not disregarding the research. I'm saying that if you look at all the data and understand how the research was written, you'll understand how they came to the wrong conclusion. It's just like people in the vegan community saying you don't have to take DHA. If you're on a vegan diet, you can get enough of those fatty acids if you just eat walnuts or flax seeds. And they'll quote a study with like 10 people in it. Or they'll say, look, that the vegans didn't have more depression than the non-vegans, or they had less depression or less dementia than the non-vegans, which is almost, these things are arguments, but they're not valid logic. Because just because you have less depression doesn't mean, or less dementia, doesn't mean that what's there wasn't caused by EPA deficiency. It doesn't mean there's genetic differences from people to people that lead to those, a large percentage of people getting into trouble if they don't pay attention to those fatty acids. What I'm saying is, I'm trying to investigate all the data and investigate it in a non-biased fashion so people can really base their decisions on correct information, because it's so frustrating to see people come to these firm decisions, even life-changing, life-shortening, brain-shrinking decisions based on inadequate data.
Yeah. And, your books are really good. I'm going to put in my show notes all your bio and your website and everything, because they are really good. That's why I love your work so much, because it is so research-based. And I'm curious now, after doing all the research you've done up to this point in your life, I know you've labeled your way of eating as a Nutritarian diet, but can you determine, after all the research, can you explain in more detail with foods about what the best diet would be? Like what foods would be on the bad list or the no-no list, and what foods should your diet mainly be compromised of?
Well, thank you for that question, because, obviously I'm recommending that people eat a diet that's high in micronutrients per calorie and also has a wide spectrum of all these beneficial micronutrients that humans need, including thousands of phytochemicals that have antioxidants, and phytochemicals with antioxidant potential, and phytochemicals that support the body's own cell repair and detoxification mechanisms is so critical. And that means a wide assortment of colorful plant foods in your diet. And I came up with an acronym called GBOMS, which stands for greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries, and seeds. GBOMS. Greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries, and seeds. To help people remember those particular foods with scientific data to show they have powerful anti-cancer effects on human bodies. They're particularly protective against breast cancer and prostate cancer. And I encourage people to eat raw green vegetables and raw onion every day. To eat seeds every day, like flax seeds, chia seeds, sesame seeds, also walnuts and nuts and seeds every day. But in any case, because a diet that's a diet, even a plant-based diet, or we could say a plant-rich diet that's deficient in enough nuts and seeds, could be too low in fat to adequately absorb the phytochemicals necessary to prevent cancer. And plant diets that are restricting nuts and seeds have been shown now to shorten lifespan and increase the risk of cancer, because you absorb 1/10 the amount of phytochemical exposure from a diet with more whole food fat sources in it. So those are very important. And cooked beans have been shown to protective effects against longevity protection and protective effects against cancer, especially breast cancer. And we're talking about berries and mushrooms, and we're talking about cooking mushrooms, not raw, because the cooked mushrooms have more protection, but they have very powerful aromatase inhibitors. And people know that aromatase inhibition means it protects the breasts from excess estrogen stimulation and prevents that hormonal damage. And they're very high in angiogenesis inhibitors, which prevent cells from, angiogenesis is the growth of new blood vessels to fuel fat growth. And it fuels cellular replication and cellular growth. So, as animal product consumption and sugar and maple syrup and honey, as those foods feed insulin and IGF-1 and promote cancer and cell replication and fat growth, the green vegetables, the onions, the mushrooms, and these seeds have anti-fat storage effects and anti-cellular replication, anti-cancer effects. They say, no way, Jose, I'm not letting you put fat on your body. And they say, no way, Jose, I'm not letting cancer cells start to replicate or grow on your body. And by the way, they say it in Spanish like that. They say, no way, Jose, in Spanish.
I know your GBOM acronym. I love that because it's so easy to remember. And I was surprised to learn I love mushrooms. It's probably one of my favorites. But I know a lot of people that either don't like them or just don't eat them. And I was curious, why. Like, I know that I only eat them cooked, but I know some people do raw things with them, but I like them only cooked. But why is it when you cook a mushroom that it's healthier than raw?
Because most common mushrooms are high in a mild carcinogen called agaritine that blows off with a small amount of cooking. You don't lose those other benefits we talked about when the mushrooms are heated, compared to green vegetables that have to be certain green vegetables like the cruciferous family. When you chew them raw in your mouth, the myrosinase enzyme activates the production of the ITCs that have the powerful anti-cancer effects. So by cooking the Brussels sprouts or the broccoli or the kale, or by just eating cooked and not any raw, you don't get the full anti-cancer benefit. The same thing with onion. There's an enzyme called alliinase in onions that is heat sensitive. And the other important aspect of a nutritarian diet, besides being hormonally favorable, and besides having a high nutrient density, besides having a wide spectrum of anti-cancer phytochemical exposures, and besides making sure you're not deficient in any protective nutrient, we're also talking about avoiding things that are carcinogenic or toxic in the body. And that's the fourth principle. And then people know about mercury and PCBs and dioxins and things like that. But a lot of people don't recognize, for example, that folic acid and synthetic petroleum-derived vitamin A, that these vitamin pills that people are taking and the nutritional yeast they're pouring all over their food that's fortified with petroleum-derived folic acid has cellular replication potential and can promote increased risk of cancer. So I'm also advising people to be careful with not to consume certain supplemental ingredients or fortified foods with folic acid that could impair their long-term health.
Yeah, and it's really sad that our way of life in America became like junk food that was with fortified nutrients on it instead of just eating the God-given food like a plant or a fruit or a green or a bean or, whatever, a veggie, and you can get it from there. But now we have to fortify everything and people need to eat like so many calories just to get a little of something. Their bodies are all so nutritionally starving that's obesity, in my opinion, comes so much from people just craving real nutrition and you can't get it from the foods that they're eating. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree, except I would take it even further than that. And I would say the fact that we give people drugs to lower their blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes derails their potential to get well, because if we never had those drugs, they'd be forced to change their diet. And by giving people folic acid during pregnancy to prevent neural tube defects, enables women not to have to think about eating green vegetables and beans and healthy foods to get folate. And the lack of green vegetables and natural phytochemicals in those foods protect against your child's intelligence and whether your child gets autoimmune conditions or allergies, infections, or even we're talking about childhood cancer. So what I'm saying is that the woman's diet, not just during pregnancy, but that she eats prior to conception, affects the health of her children. And the idea that we can take a pill instead of having to eat right reinforces and emotionally and psychologically makes it unnecessary for people trying to eat right to get folate in their diet, so they don't have to eat right. And we've sparked an epidemic of childhood cancer. We decreased our children's intelligence. We increased their risk of infections and allergies, and we set them on the road to an unhealthy life. Right from the start with this use a pill mentality instead of trying to eat the food, because if you ate the food for the folate, you wouldn't just get the folate to prevent the birth defect. You get hundreds of other nutrients that would also protect the full spectrum of diseases that are caused by lack of vegetables in the diet, including cancer in children. And so we're talking about the fact that the fast food diet and the processed food diets that people eat today it ruins your brain function, it lowers intelligence and the ability to succeed in life, it increases propensity for drug addiction, it's the gateway drug to drug use, it increases violence, it takes away the opportunity in urban communities to reach the American dream, leads to bigotry and racism, it leads to people going, half the people in prison, in federal prisons today are there because of nonviolent related drug offenses, which start from eating junk food and processed foods and getting stimulated, overly stimulating foods when they're young in life. So yes, I'm agreeing with you, but I'm taking it a step further that the amount of problems we can help in our present-day society, if instead of looking for pills, people look to food to enable their body to have a full spectrum of the nutrients they need, is overwhelmingly profound. And the cornucopia of benefits would be overwhelming on our society if people learned more about nutritional science.
When you isolate one nutrient, like you said, you're getting only that one nutrient, but that food in its whole form is giving you so many things, so many.
Giving you thousands of nutrients when you eat the folate in those natural foods. That's
Exactly.
right.
And they just, like we had this friend recently that said, well, I'm not worried about getting diabetes because, they have that under control now. They have good medications for that. And I was like, oh my God, he has no idea, like the depth of this horrible disease of diabetes. I mean, to make a statement like that, it blows me away that there's somebody who can really believe that statement, that they're willing to just take a pill and deal with a chronic disease that's as horrible as diabetes. But that
right.
is the
And
mentality.
if people were properly informed, that's right. If they were properly informed, they couldn't say that. And that's my fight here, and that's my objection to conventional medical care. And I covered this in my book, The End of Diabetes, in my book, The End of Heart Disease. I gave people comprehensive informed consent, understanding the dangers of these drugs. If they really knew the lack of efficacy, the safety problems, and the really risks of this conventional care, and that eating a natural diet designed to reverse disease is 100 times more effective, many more millions of people would make these changes. And the ignorant comment of that man sums up exactly what's wrong with conventional medical care today, is people are just given a pill under the false sense of a false assurance that the pills can taking care of their problem so they can continue abusing their body with the diet that created the problem to begin with, which just continues to advance and get them sicker and sicker. And the drug compounds the issue and make it worse in most cases.
Well, and not only that, then they're on 5 drugs and then it's 7 drugs and then they all have interactions and it's just an absolute nightmare. Time to take your break and get a drink. Maybe it's your healthy smoothie, a juice, or a big glass of pure distilled water like I love. But I just want to tell you guys that I discovered that my podcast was in the top 125 podcasts in the health category of iTunes. I finally figured out how to check that. For all this time, I didn't know how to do it because I only saw that there was a what's hot category and they only list the top 50. But the top podcast category is the top 200. And I've been looking the last week since I discovered how to do it and I wasn't there. And I was thinking, okay, that's my immediate goal. So guess what? I got up this morning and I was 123 in the ranking. And that's pretty good because did you guys know that there is 2,000 new podcasts submitted to iTunes every single day? Isn't that crazy? So I was pretty happy. And you know why I'm grateful now for all of you tuning in every single week. Thanks for helping me get the word out to as many as we can. You know my mission is to reach 1 million because people are so sick and they need to know the truth. It's time to take our power back and put your health in your own hands. And if you haven't left a review for the show and you feel inspired, then you guys know what to do. You can go to the show notes and there's a link there, or you can go right into iTunes and do it there. And I'll love you if you do that, but I love you anyway. You can also support the show with donations that you can send direct from my website or by using that Amazon banner on my website for all your Amazon purchases. If you click on it and then you bookmark that page, it'll take you there every time. Thanks again for all of you that are making the effort to show your support. Okay, now let's get back to the show. My question, I wonder to you, like there's different stages. I think there's a large part of the population that truly doesn't know, but it's getting harder and harder to think that maybe they haven't heard something about it. And so sometimes I think, they can go into mode of like, I'd rather not know, or just live in denial and pretend like they're listening to their doctor instead of looking on their own. Yes, there's a lot of people that haven't been exposed to any of that and truly don't know. But then there's a big part of the population that just wants to continue eating the way they are, that if they know more than that, then maybe they would feel guilty about what they're doing and they would have to change. And either they don't have enough willpower to change or they just are not interested. I'm not sure, but I think that part of the population is growing because there's so much message out there now about certain foods that are really unhealthy that I can't understand why someone can make a comment like that or choose to do so much bad eat bad foods or bad medicine for a symptom rather than to try to fix it. What do you think is the driving force behind people to not change other than uneducation?
It's that the food we choose to eat and that we're raised in and become habituated to, we become addicted to those foods, both emotionally addicted and physically addicted. We have physical withdrawal symptoms, and we have psychologically and emotional and physical dependency on those foods. And when you're an addict, it takes over part of your brain. So you come up with excuses, rationalizations, even delusional thoughts to continue and to make excuses for and rationalize your addictive behavior. And we deal with a lot of people in my medical practice, in my residential program in Florida, where we accept people in to stay for weeks or months dealing with food addictions and emotional overeating behaviors. We get to the core issues of their psychology and why they're in denial. And once they're off these addictive foods in a setting where they can't eat these foods anymore, and they watch the body transform themselves, they lose that attraction. But they start to be able to accept the information, because their brain is now, they're back in control of their brain. You'd be amazed at how when you're drinking coffee and donuts and eating some, cheeseburgers, how it infects your ability to think logically, because your addictive side of your brain is like controlling your behaviors. So we're talking about the addictive nature of the unhealthy habits, and the more unhealthy your diet is, the more effect it has on controlling and making thoughts perpetuating that way of eating. So it's a very difficult obstacle, and that's why you need really trained professionals to work with some of these people to get them better. And I see it all the time, and that makes it so there's a lot of, what's the word? It's an art to be able to reach people and to be able to motivate them and teach them how to change, and make them stick with it and enjoy eating this way.
And there's so much, like with mental illness, the schizophrenia, the bipolar, there's so much that could be done. And these usually are the people that are eating the worst foods, lifelong, horrible diet, and so easily affected because they're sensitive to begin with and easily affected by these horrible diets. And I always feel like one day there needs to be like a mental hospital that's all based on Nutritarian diet. They would see their medicines like be shaved away and true health come back. But
I have to say again that I'm tremendously excited about having such a residential center.
Yeah.
I have a place called Dr. Fuhrman's Health Oasis in Florida, where people could be admitted for 4 to 12 weeks, a tremendous medical staff. Their credit cards, money, and car keys are taken away. They're fed a very, very careful diet. They're dealt with by professionals. I have a wonderful medical director there and a team of psychological counselors that deal with people with emotional eating disorders, psychological disorders, heart disease, obesity, diabetes, and eating that are just getting remarkable results because they're there in a facility that's geared with professionals to not just train them how to eat and how to cook, but also deal with the psychological issues that led to their bad food choices and help them get back on the right track again. They're often discharged 50 pounds lighter with a whole new outlook on life, where most of them are off their antidepressants and anxiety drugs when they leave. We improve their mental state and their physical well-being. It's just so it's exciting what you can do. And you're right that what I'm saying here, it's almost like a nutritional hospital. It treats people with food, not drugs. And I do have a medical practice where we treat people as well, but some people just need to be immersed into a facility where there's no chance for them to not do this right and reverse their condition.
Well, that's cool. I didn't know that your center there, your hospital thing could take people for 12 weeks because that's what it takes. It takes people that whether they want to change their commitment once they get there, they can't leave. So it's cool that you said you take their car keys and their wallet and they're there for the duration because that's how it's going to change. There's so many ups and downs of detoxing from a bad diet that you just need to have enough time with someone for them to come out the other side and see the benefit of what they're doing. So,
exactly. So many times in my career, I've had my own, guest house where I put people in there, and some of these people had narcotic addictions and had tobacco addictions. And after 3 or 5 days of trying to detoxify, they would say to me, "I'm going. Give me my keys back. Let me get out of here. I can't take it. I'm going back to smoking. I gotta get out of here." And I'd say, "No. You're not leaving. You signed the paper that say you were going to be here for 2 weeks or 2 weeks or a month. I'm not giving you your keys or money back. You could walk away, but you're going to be walking down the street with no money, no car keys. And, the people, they'd be cursing at me. They'd be, you wouldn't believe the curses, the threats, the suits, everything else. But you know what? A couple of weeks later, when the person's all better and off their cigarettes and off their narcotics and back to good health again, they praise me and how I'm so sorry to give you a hard time, and you saved my life, and my family, my children are so indebted to you, and your tough love was what I needed, and so it's hard sometimes.
It is hard, and you're one person. We need centers like this in every city.
I always say, if you had a child that you loved more than anything in the world and they were addicted to cocaine, I wouldn't let them out of my sight. I'd keep them chained to my desk. I would make sure that they, patients sometimes say it could be tough on them. But if you loved somebody, doctors don't care enough. If you really care, you're going to make sure this person gets well and doesn't even and some of their biggest enemies of themselves, when they're first getting off these toxins and addictive behaviors.
And then there's this other group of people that I want to talk about who, because it seems like when you hear people talk about health or nutrition, they're always comparing like the SAD diet, the standard American diet, compared to like your diet, which is the ultimate nutrient dense diet. But there's a lot that I feel is a large group of people that think they're healthy, that maybe they're the paleo eaters, the other, there's millions of diets out there, but they'll say, no, I eat good. I eat only grass-fed meat and raw milk, and I, don't eat sugar. But still, those kind of people, they feel, to me, I think that's more dangerous only because I feel like they think they're educated, but what they're educated on feels like from a wrong foundation to me, that's more dangerous than not knowing. And I wonder what you think about that group of people that claim that they have a healthy diet, but if you saw them, you would clearly say they're making lots of dangerous mistakes in their daily eating.
Well, don't forget, I think almost everybody's making dangerous mistakes in their daily eating on both sides of the equation. So we know that, and that's what we've been speaking about on this discussion today. And, we have overweight people say I'm healthy, but I'm overweight. There's no such thing as being healthy and overweight. If you're overweight, you're not healthy. There's no such thing as being on a high meat diet and being healthy. You're at higher risk of dementia and sudden cardiac death and cancer. There's no such thing as a person with breast cancer who's healthy. If you had breast cancer, you weren't eating healthy. You wouldn't have gotten breast cancer. We're talking here of the idea that these are diseases that are just ubiquitous in America. And they can have better than average health, maybe even on a paleo diet than the average, fast food eating person. But better than average health is still inadequate health. And you're still going to be at high risk of death. And then people make a comparison to the Mediterranean diet, where the number one cause of death in the Mediterranean countries is still heart attacks and strokes. And just because they have a lower rate of heart attack deaths than we do, a slightly lower rate, doesn't make it an ideal way to eat. It just makes it a little bit better than the American way of eating. So even some of the paleo advocates might be eating better than more conventional eaters, or might not be. But their definition of what's ideal is way off. And it's sad that they think they're doing what's ideal. And if they want to do what's suboptimal, knowing what's ideal and what the benefits would have been and how they could have liked it just as much, then it's okay. But you know what? I'm agreeing with you, but at the same time, we have to recognize that in today's society, people are utterly confused about nutrition. They're bombarded with lots of different messages and different avenues from all over the place. And they choose to believe whatever they feel most comfortable believing based on what fits what they want to eat.
Yeah, that's what I always say. It's based on what they want to eat. If I really didn't want to give up my meat and I can read 3 articles that says it's good for me and this diet's going to, help me live longer and it's all baloney. But if I read that to support what I wanted to do, then I'd just stop there and say that I'm doing a healthy diet. And I really think it's more to do about not, they're kind of just wanting to keep their ways and eat the way they want because it's what they can't change and it's what they want to eat. So they just find something to support that. And so I agree.
Yeah, and then you have people advocating coconut oil and satin butter and ghee and olive oil and any kind of, and more fat the better, even if it's oil-based and not whole food-based. These nutritional gurus give out suboptimal and often slanted and poor interpretation of nutritional science to their followers. And it's somewhat sad, but all we could do, and I appreciate the work that you're doing and in supporting my work and being so similar and aligned, but obviously, I try to get the message out, and it's so rewarding that more and more people are embracing and learning about more nutrition. And, it should be reading, writing, and arithmetic and nutritional science right through grade school, and people learn nothing about the most important thing that affects their longevity, whether they're demented, whether they're in a nursing home, whether their life is tragic or not. The most critical thing affecting their health and happiness, people are completely ignorant about. And even the dietitians are mostly ignorant, but a lot of them. But they're just backwards, and their education is not up to date. Which I'm working with dietitian programs now to make them embrace more modern science and to be more accurate and more effective. But in any case, we continue to work to move forward and to teach and educate people as much as they can. But the person has to take responsibility and has to learn and become a nutritional expert. And certainly I want to help them do that. The knowledge in this field is of critical importance to all of our lives.
Well, I agree. Nutrition and just eating, it's something we do every single day, several times a day. It's sad that we grow up as kids. We don't learn what a carrot or a beet looks like anymore. And they don't know, why it's healthy or that we should eat it or what it tastes like, most kids. It's sad, but it's true. We've just been far removed for it because we've been taught math and reading, but not about eating, cooking, and nutrition. But hopefully, there are a lot of people doing good work trying to bring that in and people like you trying to set the record straight with research. It's an uphill battle, but at least we're fighting, right? Okay, so now I'd just like to know, why are essential fatty acids so important for our brains?
We need the essential fatty acids for not just for growth of the brain, but for health of the brain all through life. And I've seen plenty of vegans develop dementia and have brain problems due to extremely low DHA levels, especially that a percent of people don't convert the short-chain omega-3 fats into long-chain fats as efficiently as other people do. But the idea that we were supposed to eat more butter and more ghee and more oil and more to protect the brain, that's total insanity. And that actually leads to more that goes the other way. I mean, the brain doesn't make antioxidants like the body has the antioxidant response elements in the tissues. And the brain is more susceptible, more vulnerable to lack of antioxidants in the daily diet. It needs a constant exposure to antioxidants to prevent premature aging of the brain. So there's lots of reasons. We need the proper amount of omega-3 and proper nutrients and lack of deficiency in any particular nutrient. The brain is otherwise a very susceptible or fragile organ that needs to be properly cared for all through life to maintain itself in proper health.
And one of the other things that goes along with that theory is many of them are afraid to eat fruit because they're told that it doesn't, what the brain needed was the fat and fruit is sugar and it's not good. And I just think that I know personally so many people that are afraid to eat fruit. It's kind of scary.
Right. You're saying that, and we're both saying there's a lot of bad information out there and a lot of erroneous, incorrect ideas all over the place. And we could mention one crazy idea after another, that people are doing. But in any case, hopefully there's more and more people getting better information and will so in the future. In the long run, the best information wins out.
Yeah.
In the long run, we've seen more and more that people are recognizing now the importance of these healthy fats through nuts and seeds, not through oil, because of different biological effects on the body when you eat them in the whole food form. And more we're seeing people recognize that these colorful plant foods and even berries and fruits have beneficial effect on longevity, anti-cancer effects, and anti-dementia effects. So in the long run, we're seeing as more evidence accumulates and more data gets out there and more publicity gets out there about it, the things that are wrong eventually fade out over many years, and the things that are right rise to the top usually.
I agree completely, and it's kind of what always gives me hope is that the truth will always surface. Look, I'm a homeopath, and homeopathy has been attacked for years, and it's hundreds of years now, and if it can rise through all that, then there's something to it. So yeah, the truth eventually surfaces, and that keeps me going. I'm also curious about your Nutritarian diet. What are the foods that you would say are to avoid on there?
Well, the foods to avoid are foods that are not part of the Nutritarian diet, obviously. I think people are aware that processed carbohydrates, donuts and cookies and rice cakes and breakfast bars and chips and soft drinks and donuts and cupcakes and things like that that processed foods are the most dangerous foods and cancer-causing foods and should have a skull and crossbones in front of them. And when you eat that pizza, when you eat that bagel, it's the same as eating a sugar cube. You're eating a cancer-promoting, brain-injuring food. And I think that the harm of these processed carbohydrates are not adequately promoted and recognized enough in our society. And secondary, when you cook an oil at high heat and fry a food in oil or with cooked oil, it creates rapid rancidity and many different rancid compounds that are carcinogenic and mutagenic and teratogenic, dangerous compounds that are so dangerous that even working in a fast food restaurant, not even eating the food, just inhaling the fumes from the heated oil is carcinogenic. Even working in a movie theater and inhaling the fumes that the popcorn, the oils, the popcorns, the phony oils, and the fats the popcorns are cooked with are dangerous to your health and longevity. The point is that people don't recognize how dangerous it is to eat fried foods from restaurants and fast food joints, and how dangerous processed carbohydrates are, because they have very detrimental effects. You might as well just be taking, toxic drugs,
Right.
or illegal drugs for that matter.
Yep.
These things are very dangerous.
Natural fats from nuts and seeds versus no of the oils. And if they're not cooked, the oils, are you still preferring no oil?
Yes. When you compare a walnut to a walnut oil, you have a completely different biological response from sesame seeds to sesame oil, from pecan to pecan oil. You have a completely different biological response. In one case, with the oil, the calories flood into the bloodstream in 3 to 5 minutes. In the other case, they take 2 to 3 hours to come into the bloodstream, and the body burns those fat for energy as opposed to storing it as fat. On the other hand, the whole food fats aren't all absorbable. A lot of the fats pass out into the toilet bowl because the fibers in these foods bind fat, and they actually have an attraction for saturated fat and for cholesterol that actually is a circulation that goes from the bloodstream into the food inside the digestive tract and back into the bloodstream and goes both directions. And these foods actually suck out unfavorable fats and make them and increase the fat in your stool. Besides having bioflavonoids and flignans and fibers and sterols and stanols and antioxidants in them, it's a completely different biological response, and people don't recognize this.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's, there's no such thing as a favorable oil. There's a favorable food, but you can't compare the whole food to the oil that was derived from that food. And if you think so it's just a horse of a different color. And that's why I'm well known for making delicious salad dressings by blending the whole nut or seed into the dressing, not the oil.
I know your salad dressing. And that's how you do it. You use
Or
the whole
brownies, or like a black bean brownie with walnuts and beans in it with cocoa powder. And we're talking here about using the nut or seed, or a vanilla ice cream with some frozen banana and walnut and macadamia nut and fresh vanilla powder. We're making delicious tasting food of all types that are utilized, that don't use oil and don't use sugar.
Yeah, and your source of sweetener, do you use dates?
Yes, we use the whole food like raisins, dates, and mostly when I make a banana ice cream, you don't need a sweetener. The banana is all the sweetener you need with some fresh vanilla and a little macadamia nut and walnut whipped together. And it's fantastically delicious. When you're used to eating things not as sweet, your taste buds get stronger, and you can enjoy the more subtle flavors better. You actually enjoy the strawberry lemon, sorbet made with no sweetener, or you enjoy the banana ice cream. And if you want, I limit the amount of sweetener to 1 date per serving on more date, and when you're putting cocoa powder that's more bitter and you want to add a sweetener. So even when I'm using a natural date or a natural fruit for sweetener, I'm still not overdoing it and making it as sweet as most Americans are used to eating their desserts, because we want people to develop that. We want their taste buds to enhance their ability to taste food, and we don't want to deaden their sweet sense. And that's where using stevia and xylitol and all these, and sorbitol, all these sweeteners, they keep people bombarded with these ultra sweet tastes, so they don't ever develop their natural ability to taste sweet strong enough to appreciate natural foods as much.
Yeah, that's so true. And what about salt? I know you're not a big advocate of salt, but could people eat little salt or any salt, and if so, what kind?
Well, I don't differentiate one salt from another. I think that's a common myth.
Yeah.
The amount of minerals in sea salts and natural salts are insignificant, and those salts still are dangerous in proportion to the amount of the excess exposed to. So basically, most natural foods have about half as many, or 50 milligrams of sodium per 100 calorie. So most natural diets give people between 500 and 750 milligrams of sodium a day, based on how many calories you consume. So I'm generally saying that limit your sodium that comes from salt, not from the natural food, to under 200 to 400 a day, based on your size and based on whether you're a big man or a small woman. On the average, don't consume more than 300 milligrams of additional sodium to your diet, so you keep that total maybe below 900 for a woman and below 1,200 for a male, something like that. In other words, we want people to generally keep under 1,000 a day so sodium doesn't become an issue in your longevity potential.
And
So,
how much of that, can you give us an idea of what is that, a half a teaspoon, a quarter teaspoon, 1 teaspoon? What is that?
well, we're talking here about if people can use a little bit of tomato sauce or a little bit of whole grain that may have some sodium added to it, or a little a half a teaspoon of Bragg's or something. We're talking here of a very low amount of sodium. A tablespoon of sodium has 2,000 milligrams. A teaspoon would have about 700 milligrams of sodium. So I think that's about right.
Yeah, so that sounds about right.
We're talking here about trying as much as possible to avoid sodium.
And getting it from the food itself.
Right. Oh, by the way, I spoke wrong. It's a teaspoon of sodium is over 2,000 milligrams. So a half a teaspoon is over 1,000 milligrams of sodium.
Wow.
So that we're talking about a quarter of a teaspoon is still over 500 milligrams, is way over what I'm saying a person should take in a day. So I'm talking about a tiny bit of sodium added to some food that we should not be using salt and measuring out in teaspoons or tablespoons. I just wanted to confirm that a quarter teaspoon of salt is 575 milligrams of sodium, and that is unfavorable.
Okay. And now what about raw food versus cooked food? What part of the diet, is there a healthy percentage for you?
No, I don't want to give people precise percentages because the difference could be variable from people to people, and there are many types of broad percents that are acceptable for many people. However, one of my mantras is to eat a salad every day so people get a good big serving of raw vegetables, and I want them to put on the salad some raw cruciferous like shredded cabbage or kale or bok choy or arugula or watercress to get those ITCs in. And as you know, I have specific ways I want people to cook the soups and the stews and the chilies to maintain the nutritional benefits, to maintain the activity of those phytochemicals, because some foods, as you know, as we're talking about here today, are better cooked than raw. But in any case, certainly I thought that this is a very valuable conversation that we've had, and I think people will get a lot of information. And certainly, they need to get enough information and decide whether they want to pursue this further and become real expertise at it.
Yes, I think that's so true. Can you tell people, first of all, where they can follow you? Do you do Twitter, Facebook? Can you let us know, tell them your website? I'll put all that in the show notes, but just so that you can say it out loud on the show here.
Yes, my website is drfuhrman.com. So that's drfuhrman.com. And I have Facebook and Twitter and those things, of course. But of course, on the website is the best source of information. And I even have a membership where people can ask the doctor advice and advice from myself and my medical staff. And we have, newsletters and teleconferences and all types of thousands of recipes and an ability to customize the program for your particular condition, like lupus or psoriasis. We're talking here about giving people the information they need to make sure they can get results. And I just want to give people hope that they don't have to be sick and that nutrition has powerful answers to help them recover if they should be suffering with a condition.
Great. And can you give them a few tips of what the first step should be if they want to really change to healthy eating pattern? What could they do to make the transition?
Well, the two first steps I usually recommend, I have 10 steps to a healthy life, but the first step is really probably to eat a salad every day and describe what that salad should have on it. And I'm giving you, and of course I'm advocating the dressings are important here, to use a healthy dressing as well. But to start with a salad, as a large salad as a main dish at least once a day, is I want everybody to do it. And I try to do it myself. I don't always do it every day, but I try to do it almost every day. And then of course the second thing is to, make a big bowl of vegetable bean soup on the weekend, or a big chili or a big stew. So you can have leftovers and put it in various containers for the week. So now you can have your lunch. If you have that salad and soup and a piece of fruit for lunch, and the next step is to convert your breakfast where you're having some of those flax seeds or chia seeds with with a whole intact grain like steel cut oats with berries and something. So once you've converted your breakfast to being healthy and your lunch to being healthy, you've gotten 2/3 of it down right there. If people just did that, that would be a huge step towards a healthier society.
Good advice. And lastly, I'm just curious, it's kind of a silly question, but do you skate and do you still love it?
No, I don't. I don't have time to skate. And also, don't forget, I've skated for thousands of hours or that many hours a day for so many of my life. And as I get older, you can't do the same tricks and fly through the air and that I used to enjoy as much. So I play singles tennis, I water ski, I snow ski a lot. I enjoy sports and running on the beach and swimming and biking, and I do a lot of sports and athletics, but I don't really ice skate much. Maybe as my workload gets lighter in the future, I'll take it up again and I'll start to skate and do more, enjoyable skating, maybe spinning and some little jumping again. But right now I haven't skated that much in the last 10 years.
Yeah, it's funny. That's like me too. A lot of people ask, but it is a time thing. But I think also once you've done it at that level and put so many hours into it, it's kind of not that high on your priority list because it takes such a level to do it at something that you would be happy with that it's almost better not to do it.
Yes, probably right.
And there's, a lot of burnout in training, especially your sport. You guys do it at such a young age because your career is over much faster than like golf, but it doesn't matter what the sport is. It's so intense these days to be world class that it just takes so much training that I think when you're done, you can be done. All right, Dr. Fuhrman, thank you so much. You gave us a lot of information, and I hope more people will follow your work and help spread your word because you do so much good work. And I just want to thank you for everything you do and for joining me today because your work has so much integrity. I love it, and thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. And good luck to you and all your listeners, and wishing you, of course, great health and much happiness.
Okay, have a great day. Dr. Fuhrman is really into reading all the science, so he really understands all the arguments coming from both sides, and that can help set us straight because, as he said, there are so many articles out there written that have no science behind them or no research. The lesson to learn is don't believe everything you ask Dr. Google, you guys. I know that the answer to my question that I asked him when I said, how can people know what article is science-based when they read it? And his answer was, read my books. I know that sounds funny, but really once you get to know him, you'll understand why he said that because he really does read a lot of research and come up with the proper conclusion. And all his stuff is research and science-based, so it makes a lot of sense. So please check out one of his many books and see what you can learn from that. It's always good to have a great source that you know is accurately based on research. There are even a few things that people in the plant-based world disagree on, like fats or no fats, salt or no salt. But at least most agree that the more you can eat foods in their whole form without any process to them and without any additives, and the more you exclude animal products, the healthier you will be. Plant-powered, that's what I call it, right? And notice I say that instead of plant-based. Because you get a lot of power when you eat plants, but you power the planet because we can heal it. All right, I hope you guys learned a lot today because that's always my goal, to fill those heads up with information so that you learn the truth of how food is our best medicine. So that's it. My time is over with you guys, at least for today. It's time to say goodbye. I hope you enjoyed the show today, my podcast family. Until next week, eat plants and feel empowered to heal. Vidal has spoken. Remember, you heal with a plant-powered diet, homeopathy, and detoxing, of course. Peace. Be healthy. Be free. Live life.